Hello friends, this is Fatali sir and I welcome you all in my fourth and last part of video, a triangle surgery. This part is most interesting and important, so don't skip and watch till end. Guys, I have a small request to all of you. Please subscribe my channel to stay up to date with my latest videos. Dear students, today we are going to study page number 5 of the lesson, a triangle surgery. Let's read the paragraph. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricky's constitution. For a few nights, the final spirit was rolled around, inhaled, and reverently drunk. They were days of deep content, starting well with extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by midday wine, and finishing luxuriously around the fire with the brandy. It was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest, but I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery. The chopper opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey almost lost in the interior. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better? Yes, he's fine. There is no need for you to get out of the car. I'll go and fetch him. I walked through the house into garden. A mass of dog was hurtling round and round the lawn, and in their midst, ears flapping, tail waving, was the little golden figure of Tricky. In 2 weeks, he had been transformed into a little hard muscle animal. He was keeping up well with the pack, stretching out in a great bounce, his chest almost brushing the ground. Now please listen carefully, I'm explaining. Mrs. Pumphrey started sending in brandy. At that time, Mr. Harriet was not able to believe that Mrs. Pumphrey actually wanted them to give brandy to Tricky. They shared it amongst themselves. Some days, Mr. Harriet used to feel very happy as he would start his day with extra eggs. Then he would have a few glasses of wine in the afternoon and then ending the day with brandy in the evening. Because of all the things that were being sent for Tricky, Mr. Harriet was really tempted to keep him as a permanent guest at the surgery. He really wanted that Tricky should stay with him forever, but then he realized that Mrs. Pumphrey, who was like a mother to the Tricky, was really suffering and really wanted Tricky to come back soon. After 15 days, Tricky was ready to go back home, and Mr. Harriet called up Mrs. Pumphrey to come pick him up. Within few minutes, a long black car came outside. When the chauffeur opened the door, Mrs. Pumphrey was sitting inside, really nervous as well as excited. She was asking with a nervousness in her voice, "That was Tricky, really better?" To which the doctor replied positively. Mr. Harriet went inside to get Tricky. When Mr. Harriet went to the garden behind the house, he saw all the dogs moving around in the garden and Tricky was sitting between them. He had recovered wonderfully in 2 weeks. He was looking much healthier, playing with other dogs, and his chest was touching the ground. He had become a good muscular dog within 2 weeks. Let's read page number 6. I carried him back along the passage to the front of the house. The chopper was still holding the car door open, and when Tricky saw his mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. She gave a startled oof and then had to defend herself as he swarmed over her, licking her face and barking. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls, none of which had been used. As the car moved away, Mrs. Pumpere leaned out of the window. Tears shone in her eyes. Her lips trembled. Oh, Mr. Harriet, she cried, how can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery. James Harriet. Please listen carefully. When Mr. Harriet took Tricky to the front of the house, he saw that the chauffeur was still holding the door of the car, and as soon as Tricky saw his mother like mistress, he was overjoyed. He ran away and jumped into the lap of Mrs. Pumphrey and started licking her face, barking in excitement. While all this was happening, the chauffeur and Mr. Harriet got all his stuff out of the car, which had not been used during the treatment in the last 14 days. When Mrs. Pumphrey was leaving, she leaned out of the window and said to Mr. Harriet, with tears of joy in her eyes, that she could not thank him enough for what he had done. This is a triumph of surgery, meant that the treatment that was given to the Tricky had been successful.